the Federal Reserve's come out and said we're headed towards the edge of that cliff. Well, of course, they put us on that trajectory.
Well, that's right. And I think the catalyst, although it seems mundane after several years, is going to be Europe. This deal that was made today, which refinances, bails out again Greece, is a loser. In January, revenues were up like 4.5% for the government, and spending was up plus 8.5%. So they're not making any headway, and they're not going to make any headway, and they don't care about making headway. And so that deal is going to fall asunder, and they know that. And a very important thing to happen last week is in Karlsruhe, Germany, the Federal District Court, Federal National Court, I'll call it that rather than go into German, they said that this new vehicle to finance these financially unsound countries, which had previously been under something called the EFSF, the Germans and others want to use this new ESM in order to do that by rolling EFSF into ESM. They can't do it. The German court says that is illegal under the Constitution. So they either have to pass an amendment or something, or they're not going to be able to allocate funds to ESM. And, of course, part of ESM was even more austerity. I mean, don't the Germans think for 1 second, when you have austerity down the road, the people who you're exporting to, that they're going to have less of an economy because of the austerity, and that means you're not going to be able to export as much to them as you did before, which means their economy is going down.
There's a chain reaction.
Going down. Exactly.
All right.
And so that is a nightmare. Believe me. They're no closer now than they were 3 years ago.
All right, I want to shift gears into Coney 2012 in just a minute and get your take on this. I'm going to give you a briefing here, Bob, and get your analysis on it. But first, I want to just ask you briefly what you think we should do to try to resist this open UN, Pentagon, globalist, banker coup d'etat. I mean, they admit in Time magazine that it's a banker coup. Here's the article. Regime change in Europe, do Greece and Italy amount to a banker's coup? And they say yes, but the bankers know how to run it. Congressman Walter Jones and senators have introduced the H-Con Res 107, or House Res 107, and they say it's a high crime, and that if he doesn't reverse himself, they're going to initiate impeachment. Well, that needs to happen when Congress said you got to get permission for Libya, and he said, no, I have the UN. Just because the Pentagon came in and disgraced you, you already disgraced yourself passing the NDAA. You already, so yeah, if you want to come to your senses, of course they came in front of the world, said Congress has no authority, and they're ceremonial, just like Caesar did in 49 BC. But I think everybody should call the Judiciary Committee over impeachment and say, look, the whole world knows what's going on here. You either tell those traitors over at the Pentagon, because the military's waking up, that they better come out and say, yes, our commander-in-chief is the president during war, and Congress is in charge of the president. I want to hear that chain of command right now, or this is a coup that's been successful. This is a big deal. We can't just take this sitting down. We've been trained to accept so much. Nobody put up with this. Coups are one thing, but foreign coups through puppets, nobody puts up with that. You think Mexico would put up with the president openly saying he takes his orders from the U.S., even if it's true that the big banks give them? I mean, they would riot in a minute and overthrow the government. The police and military would walk out. And that's a third world police state. I mean, do we have any basic honor? Anything? Here's the number, 202-225-3951, 202-225-3951, Judiciary Committee. Lamar Smith's the head of it, 202-225-4236. Call the general switchboard if you want. But the point is, we need to take action on this now. I mean, what else can we do, Bob? I guess get the articles off Infowars.com out to everybody. Coup d'etat, Pentagon and Obama declare Congress ceremonial. I mean, what do you think we should do, Bob?
Well, all of the people who are on the air, such as myself, should put the word out, of course. And all of you people who are blogging on the Internet, you should do the same thing. And all of you people out there, give encouragement to these people who step forward and expose what's being done here. And also, it doesn't hurt, short note to every congressman, and just tell them, we know what you're doing, and we want that reversed, and because it's unconstitutional. And if you don't, you're going to have an awful lot of people mad at you.
Very well said. All right, now on this next subject, I have done research over the years on the Lord's Resistance Army in Uganda and the general Congolese Congo area, and I've interviewed political scientists, experts on the subject, just to double-check my research, and I'm not saying that Joseph Kony is a good guy, but he has a few thousand followers, maybe 500 ragtag troops. He does use child soldiers because in the area the kids just starve. So it's always been that way in Africa and many other areas that are primitive in their technological development. The kids either starve or they're brought in and trained as soldiers. I mean, in the old days, they had 9-year-olds they would grab off the streets in England and force into military service. I mean, that's as old as civilization, when civilization was more primitive. The point is that Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, all of them, Kim Kardashian, all these Hollywood people, George Clooney, are behind this Kony 2012. And the symbol is a donkey and elephant together saying one thing we can all agree on. Well, this is what we predicted in the Obama deception. It is an African invasion of Africa, the beachhead in Libya, murdering, mass murder there, destabilization using al-Qaeda. The current leader of Uganda was connected in the last 20 years to other groups that have been involved in more than 7 million killed. So they're literally comparing him to Hitler, this new guy, Kony, who's like a nobody, like a Beverly Hillbilly or something. They've got Hitler next to bin Laden, next to Kony. He's the new Hitler. And this video's gotten 50 million views in 5 days. It's being promoted by every globalist outfit. Bill Gates is promoting it, who openly says he wants to reduce the population of Africa. And they're targeting school kids, and they're flooding us saying, you've got to stand for the children that are being kidnapped by Kony and turned into military minions. Well, that's standard all across the entire continent. And goes on in many other continents. But the point is, it's purely, in fact, they say in these news reports, they wanted to make him the villain. They don't even hide that. So it's just like they use Remington's paintings to claim the Spanish were slaughtering people in Cuba in 1898. And the head of Hearst Publishing said, give me the images, I'll give you a war. So this is pure war propaganda. And they've now got the whole anti-war left calling for war in Libya, calling for it in Syria, calling for it in Iran, and calling for a AFRICOM invasion by U.S. forces, as Tarpley predicted 3.5 years ago in Obama deception, in the Congo-wide area. And you watch, if this gets kicked off, genocide, and I'll have to have trendies lecturing me on how great they are because they're going to get some little ragtag guy in one tiny area who's a joke. I mean, it's just, they go, here's the bad man, invade. People are like, kill. I mean, it's like Saddam and the baby incubators. I'm going to come back from break and get Bob's take on this. But people kept calling me about this the last 2 days. I looked into it, and they're targeting 10, 12, 13, 14-year-olds. And they've got all these little kids spamming the web with it, and people crying and getting donations for money for the UN, just like they had blood diamond movies about there's African countries where they mine their own diamonds. They have child labor. It's the UN and De Beers that's running around enslaving people and doing all this. And a blood diamond's a money that the Rothschilds don't get. I mean, literally, they use this humanitarian cover. It's pure propaganda. The West wants Africans dead, and this will be the pretext to go in there and kill them.
Healthy soils.
Of course, I forgot my biggest point on the whole Kony situation. This is all about legitimizing the International Criminal Court. Anybody that resists the New World Order, they had that 5-nation group of commandos led by the U.S. try to go in and kill this guy just because he's one little resistor. And now he's being used as the poster boy to have full-on invasion against all sorts of others like him, Muslim and Christian on both sides, and even animist, to invade the whole area. Bob Chapman, I mean, we've got the West that loves killing 1 million Iraqis, loves doing all this, and now we have Kim Kardashian, all the big liberals, and George Clooney with Bill Gates. And I noticed on YouTube, and people got snapshots of this, within live time, it went up like 1 million views in an hour when they launched it 5 days ago. Well, everybody knows, even when we've had stuff with hundreds of thousands of views or anybody else, it says 301 or 306 while it caches, then waits half a day before the numbers start updating. But you can always tell when it probably hasn't had 50 million views. I mean, YouTube is heavily involved with Obama. Google that owns it is. What's your take on them inventing a new boogeyman and saying, he's Hitler, he's bin Laden, we've now got to invade Africa?
Well, there's a long history of this, especially after the years which began the decolonization of Africa. And I lived in Africa for several years, mostly in southern Africa, which would be South Africa, and Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. And I spent a lot of time in Mozambique and Angola, Zambia, which used to be northern Rhodesia. But as you say, there aren't many jobs around. And it's pretty easy to recruit people to get involved in wars or disruptions. And they don't care whether they get killed or not. They get really very little to live for. And that's been going on for a long time. But the bottom line here is that usually what has happened is an outside group like BP or Exxon or De Beers or whatever, they're behind the whole thing. And they take a fellow like the one you've been mentioning, and they round up a bunch of people for him and give them guns and say, go off in that direction up there and raise heck, and because you're supposed to do that. And they do it.
Well, let me expand on this. We're not even saying that this Coney guy's a good guy. He's literally a nobody out there. It's an excuse to bring in AFRICOM and this huge U.S. global buildup for a new colonialism publicly. And they've got the left now, who usually is anti-war but's been silent, is cheering for war. And they could care less about the children. It's, oh, the invisible children. Oh, Coney's like Hitler. Oh, we care so much. And it's all about selling people on going in and carrying out globalist eugenics in Africa. I mean, Bill Gates has said he wants them dead. And it's Bill Gates. I mean, it is sick. Isn't that sick, Bob?
It certainly is. And, you know, those poor people have enough problems just surviving. And I know I had a business there. We had 300 people working for us, and I didn't even need half the people. I used to hire them just so they'd have a job. What was funny is every once in a while one would disappear, and about 2 or 3 months later he'd come back. And he'd say, I'm ready for work, boss. And I said, really? Where you been? He said, out in the tribal trust land. I said, well, I don't have any place for you right now. Why did you go away and come back? He said, oh, it was time for me to see my wives. So this is the kind of mentality that you're dealing with. It's very rudimentary. It's too bad, but that's the way it is. And that's how they recruit people.
Yeah, that's what's